Let's bring in Rami Khouri. He's a distinguished public policy fellow at the American University of Beirut. He joins us from Boston. As Imran was describing there, Rami, we've seen this huge increase in the scale and tempo of Israeli raids across the West Bank since the war began. What's your response to the latest raids and what they mean on the ground, Rami?
It's clear that the Israelis are very, very concerned that the situation in Gaza is going to keep spreading around the rest of Palestine. It's already spread around the region. You have the Ansarullah, the Houthis in Yemen being active militarily. You have Hezbollah in Lebanon. You have groups in Iraq and Syria, and they don't want the West Bank to erupt in a big armed intifada. There are groups already working in several of the towns and camps in the West Bank. These are small groups. They usually don't have more than 15, 20, 25 members, maybe. They're young people. They're not veteran fighters usually. And these are spontaneous military resistance groups that have sprung up in the last 3 or 4 years because the Israelis have put in jail so many hundreds of the previous generations of leaders and military activists, and this Palestinian Authority is not really doing anything to protect the Palestinians. So they feel these young people have to take things into their own hand and put up the kind of resistance that's possible. And the Israelis want to stop this. They don't want it to grow.
Yeah, Rami, that's an important point you make. I mean, Israel says its intent in Gaza is to destroy Hamas. And it's clear, it seems, the objective of these raids across the West Bank is about eradicating those Palestinian armed groups that in the West Bank that you've just mentioned, as well as Gaza.
Well, they'd like to try to do that, but I don't think you can eradicate resistance by occupied, subjugated, and humiliated and degraded human beings who have suffered these conditions for 50, 60 years. I don't think you can just stop them from resisting, from fighting back somehow, whether peacefully or militarily. So, and this is really the story of human nature over the millennia, which is degraded and occupied people will resist whenever they can. They're being more careful in the West Bank now because they've seen how vicious Israel can be. They've seen their own leaders and their own parents arrested or killed over the last 30 years, and therefore they're being more cautious about how they do resistance. They're not doing the kind of resistance that Hamas is doing or Hezbollah. But they're just basically trying to do a combination of small military acts, maybe set up improvised explosive device, set it up to blow up a passing Israeli jeep, for instance, a military jeep, or maybe try to get a sniper to hit an Israeli soldier. And these are legitimate targets in international law. But if you're occupied, you can. And also it's the symbolic action, the sense that gives the community a feeling that somebody is trying to do something to get us out of this terrible situation we're in, because the PNA, the Palestine National Authority, is not doing it. So it's really a combination of these things, but these can grow very quickly, these groups, because of the frustration that exists due to the situation in Gaza.
Rami, let's talk about the occupied West Bank and Ramallah in particular. It's always been slightly insulated, hasn't it? I mean, it's the seat of the Palestinian Authority. Its economy has thrived ahead of Gaza. But given the sheer scale of Israel's raids overnight, has this, do you think, burst that protective bubble of the West Bank?
This has happened. This has happened before. It's not the first time that this happens. They've been, and remember when Yasser Arafat was there, they surrounded him in the headquarters. So this is designed to send a message to the whole population, as well as possibly to try to arrest a couple of people who they may have identified, whether accurately or not, and to arrest them. But it's really, I think it's more preventive security work to try to send a message to the rest of the population. We're going to do this every night now. We've done it every night for the last, 40 nights, and we're going to do it at a much bigger scale if anybody tries to defy the Israeli authorities. That's my sense of what it's probably aiming to do. The other thing it's trying to do is the philosophy of Zionism and the state of Israel is to get as many of the Palestinians out of the land of Palestine as possible because they want a Jewish state. That's what Zionism is. And Netanyahu's government said it clearly last year in their statement that only the Jewish people have sovereignty and full rights in this land from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean, which is Israel and the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem. And they've been using all kinds of tactics to get people to leave, to make life so difficult economically, travel-wise. Students who go to college have to pass through 5 checkpoints, and it takes them 4 hours to get to their college in the West Bank and 4 hours to get home. And if they give up, they say, this is crazy, I'll go. So they're using all these different tactics, of which this is the latest and most dramatic.
Rami, let's talk about some of the politics briefly. I mean, what do these raids mean for Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in Ramallah? I mean, he remains deeply unpopular to many Palestinians. How much political pressure does this put on his leadership and also the Palestinian Authority?
It should put a lot of pressure on him, but he seems to be impervious to political pressure. He seems to be like an automated figure who just does his daily chores and goes to the UN once a year and makes a speech. I heard him last time he went. He was actually pretty unimpressive, pretty boring. He's too old to really do anything serious. He's politically disconnected from the people. Well, he's said almost nothing about Gaza. So he's a man who is not really a political actor anymore. He's just a symbolic figurehead. And the Israelis want that in the Palestinian Authority. That's what they want. They want a toothless, actionless, meaningless Palestinian self-governing authority that can take out the garbage and fix the electricity lines when there is electricity, so that the Israelis can go on with their settlement and annexing land and letting the settlers free. So he's not really going to, I think, react in any significant way other than making a speech. He might call a meeting of the Central Committee of the PLO, which is really, again, a non-existing body. It's just on paper. What has to happen is the combination of reconfiguring and re-legitimizing the whole PLO, which includes the Palestinian Authority, but the PLO that represents all Palestinians, and at the same time re-establishing the links between Gaza and the West Bank. They've been separated for years. So these things are going to take time.
Rami, just a final thought to you, and be brief if you can. What does all of this mean in terms of the broader picture as to what happens after the war? I mean, there's this horrific conflict we're seeing unfold on our screens in Gaza, these increased Israeli raids across the West Bank, like we've seen tonight. And as you point out, the Israeli Prime Minister dismissed any possibility of a two-state solution. What's all this telling us then, Rami, about how Gaza, how the West Bank will look after the war?
There's no way to tell. It really depends on several things. First of all, what happens when the fighting stops in Gaza? Will the Gazan people, Palestinians in Gaza, be able to rebuild their society? Will a new governing mechanism come into being that has credibility? It can't be defined by the US and Israel. It has to be defined by the Palestinians. Will there be links with the West Bank and East Jerusalem in many ways? These things are all question marks right now. There's no way we can answer these questions. What we do know is that the Palestinians want national unity. They want a PLO to be functional and credible, and they're perfectly willing to negotiate a permanent peace with Israel based on the Arab peace plan, and we've already accepted Israel's existence. So we know those things. The question, and Hamas is willing to go along with coexisting with Israel if all the Palestinians accept it. And if there's a good deal, then the Palestinians will accept it because, you know, they don't want to just keep fighting forever. They want to live a normal life. And so do the Israelis. The Israelis must not be very happy campers, given the way what they've suffered and what they're still suffering. And if they pull out of Gaza without really achieving their goals, which is a possibility.
Yeah, OK. Rami Khouri live for us there in Boston. Rami, as always, thanks for your thoughts and your analysis.
You bet.